very interesting because she will focus on documentation, that it's quite critical for the IT area. So please welcome on stage Luise Freese.
Ciao. Sono tedesca, ma voglio praticare il mio italiano un po'. So voglio provare di fare la mia introduzione in italiano e poi continuo in inglese. C'è ok? Ok, so mi chiamo Luise Freese, sono un'architetta software, che significa io costruendo applicazioni con Microsoft 365 e Power Platform e Azure. Il mio motto è cambiare il mondo un'app alla volta. Sono una principessa e un punk nel cuore. Sono una rana molto felice. Sono una madre non dei draghi, ma delle figlie. Loro hanno 14 e 50 anni. Sono un buon gustaia. Voglio tutti i carboidrati. Ho ricevuto un award come Microsoft MVP. Sono un open sourcer, troublemaker. Io amo di parlare di DevOps, UI, documentazione, accessibilità. Si trovate il mio blog su m365princess.com e on Twitter @Luise Freese. I miei pronomi sono she, her. Sono molto nerd. Amo costruendo Lego. Io profondamente credo nel concetto di sharing is caring. Il mio colore favorito è FF69B4. Sì, io conosco questo valore X alla mente. C'è hot pink. Il mio numero favorito è 42. Chi altro? Io dico it depends a lot. So what I want to say with all of that, I'm a dev, and that means this slide is available in dark mode for you as well. Okay. Now that we got this sorted, who I am, I would like to introduce you to Schrödinger's developer paradox. So who of you is familiar with Schrödinger's cat? Okay, so nearly everyone. So for everyone who's not familiar, the idea is that we have just like a cat in a box, and there's a little thing with just like some poison in it, and until we do not open the box, we don't know if the cat is still alive or if it's dead. So we need to assume that it's both at the very same time, which isn't really logical, but also very logical at the very same time, which is another Schrödinger's paradox inside of that paradox. Okay? And the developer paradox is that a developer is a person who does not like to write the docs and will die on the hill of a self-documenting function. And at the very same time, the developer is the person who heavily relies on having written docs all the time and will complain to everyone if these docs are not extensive enough. So who identifies as a developer here? Okay, you're my people. Who wants good documentation? Yay! Who wants to write the good documentation? Nay! Exactly that. And that is the entire problem. And in the next 39 minutes, so I have a watch here and it's counting down. It's a little bit of pressure on me, just like go away. So in the next 39 minutes, I'd like to convince you to not only want to have good docs, but to write good docs. I know, this is hard, but challenge accepted. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. So first we will tackle what is docs, because some people have just like a different perspective on what is documentation than I do. After that, We will cover why do we need to write the docs. Then I will explain to you why writing docs does not only make your apps better, but also makes you a better developer. Wow, that sounds great, right? Without learning a new language or a new framework, I will take that. And last but not least, obviously you will get homework. Because whoever I meet, I assign homework to them. And that sounds like a great audience to assign homework to. Okay, so what is docs? Maybe it's a README file at the root of your project, maybe, that tells you which package to install, and maybe a GitHub sponsor link. Who has a GitHub sponsor link on one of their projects? You should monetize that. Okay. Maybe it's a printed manual on how users shall use your product, and you sell that for a little bit less than $25, and it will just like catch dust on the shelf. Maybe that is documentation. Spoiler alert, it isn't. If I ask that way, no. Maybe it's all the inline comments that the juniors write, just like commenting each line of their code, super annoying. But let me tell you, there is just like extensions for that so that you can just like hide all those comments again. So they still stay there, but you will just like hide them. Or maybe it is something that we honestly plan on doing. I mean, if by all chance all stars align, and if Mercury is in retrograde at a full moon, so if at the end of a project we still have time, money, and nerves left, how likely is that? It never happens. But we still intend to do this afterwards, knowing from our last project that no one at the end of a project has nerves left, or money, or time, or that there is just like a nice full moon and you want to spend it just like writing the docs. So lucky for us, none of that is how I think about documentation. When I think about docs, docs is product documentation. I only talk about the dev docs because yes, someone needs to write the user documentation. It ain't me. It's not me. And if we talk about developer documentation, yes, first, there's the software requirements. That's the should document. That is what you should be building. Should is one of my very favorite words since I work in tech. It means ain't happening. Then, obviously, we have the software design. That is the ugly truth. So as opposed to the specs, that is what actually comes out of it. Sometimes it resembles at least a little bit of what the specs told us, but mostly it's just like, meh. Then we have the source code docs. That is usually what people think of docs when I say, yeah, we need to improve the docs, and then they're like, yeah, I added this function, does that and that. I don't care. I don't care about your function. Yeah, just like put in a name that somehow makes sense. Or name your variables just like a little bit more descriptive. A and B is just like, okay, if the scope is 2 lines, but beyond that, it doesn't make any sense anymore. Then, of course, we have the UX design documentation. That is mostly abandoned. Because people don't think of it as just like something super serious, because yeah, we need UX for some reason, because yeah, there's users and they don't like to use a backend just like per se. We can't let them do this, so, but someone else should take care of that. And as it's just like making things pretty, we just like try to, we tend to not take this seriously. Then there's API docs. A lack of API docs is just like responsible for 80% of your pain. Ever did so? Just like, yeah, I needed to just like interact with an API that was clearly underdocumented. And you figured out the hard way how everything works? Yeah? Okay, nice. Who writes tests? Who writes tests, please? Oh my God. My heart skipped. You can't do this to me, okay? So if I ask you questions, you need to respond, because otherwise that's not healthy for me. So we know that we don't test enough. And if we don't test enough, then likelihood that we also do not document our testing is very, very high. Yeah, looking at you, especially looking at you. And last but not least, obviously the product roadmap, the bigger picture. Just like everything that goes just like beyond one sprint, just like, hey, what's your vision about this product? How shall this evolve over time? And then obviously there's just like so much more. Deployment guides, how to get started, the TLDR. The TLDR is the most important thing. The too long didn't read, because you know what's even more annoying than writing the docs? Having to read the docs that you wrote. So you need to find a way to summarize and to condense all of that information and to capture this into 2.5 sentences. But to be able to condense something, you know what is required for that? A deep understanding of the thing. And do you know how you get a deep understanding of the thing? Only if you go over the process of rethinking this over and over and over and over and over again. And do you know what technique is just like superb to do this? Writing about it. Ever explained something to another person, and while doing so had this moment of, wow, now I understand it even more? Yes, that is writing the docs. Writing the docs has a nice byproduct. It is the docs. But writing the docs is what makes you a better developer. Because it means that you think about your code and the architecture and everything beyond it in a different way, with the goal that you condense the information. And the more dense the information is, that means that you have more information in one place. And the more information, the deeper you go with that. So that is just like, that is the end goal. Okay, let's go over that. The should document. Yeah, it describes how it should be built, and then we don't do this. And all the requirements are in there. And usually we have these tight requirements because some Nepo baby just like told us that they want this or that. Never? Yeah, for me as well. And also just like at least a basic set of use cases. And that is the document that usually gets written. Because if it doesn't, we do not start to work. So you need to give me a carrot, right? And that is the carrots that I need to start working. And then we have the how do we actually build this document. And usually, if people start with a project, they think of docs as, yeah, let me first write the code, and then do the testing, and then if the customer or the internal customer or whoever said, yeah, I kind of like it after each sprint, then we will just like write something about it. And that is a huge problem, because software documentation, at least the SDD, that is a living and breathing document. That is something that is always open during your dev time. That is something that always gets modified during your dev time. And also, it needs to make sure that everyone keeps to stay on the same page, literally same page. But if this page does not exist, how can someone exist with you on that page? So, and a blank page doesn't count. Just, okay, I need to be strict with you. Okay, the source code doc. You know, all these comments that are totally unnecessary. Write code in a way that another skilled developer knows what you're doing there, and only if you do shady things. Then you need inline comments. And for me, I always think about it that way. Well, sometimes I want to try things out, you know, so I'm in an early phase of a feature, and then I want to just for now, quick and dirty. That's one of the lies that I tell myself. Another lie is, I will refactor this later. Yes, I know. So when I think about, well, but I need to write this down, there is some social pressure on me, because if I know that I now need to put this into an official doc, that I did this super shady thing, this prevents me from doing the shady thing in the first place, because the social pressure that someone will read that document. So I will do it right just from the beginning. I will not do the quick and dirty, because we know that the refactor will not happen. Or if it happens way too late, causing a lot of extra cost and overhead and just like issues again. So doing it right from the beginning will just like save you not only a lot of money, but also a lot of nerves. How many of you are just like really into reading release notes? Writing release? Yay, you're my people. Yeah, because, so I want to know what changed. I want to know if I need to invest myself into a new version of something. And obviously, best approach is to automate this with your commit messages, because you do source control anyway. So if I ever catch any one of you with minor improvements or bug fixes, I can't tell this on stage, what I do. But don't let me catch you with that. And then obviously that needs to be up to date. No one benefits if your release notes are not up to date anymore. Test docs. Shall we talk about this? I would say we don't, because that would be just like a shameless plug in here. So testing is a very underused mechanism. So I will come back next year and talk about that, okay? Will this be a deal? You took note, right? Okay, thank you. The UX docs. You know, UX is part of product design, yes, okay, and we just like start at the requirement stages and all the way through just like post-release stages. UX is always there, everywhere. It's scary, I know. And obviously we need the personas, and obviously we need the scenario, and we need the story maps, and we need the style guides. And yes, that includes a guide for accessibility as well. Accessibility is part of UX. It is not a separate topic. It is not, if we have time and budget, then we care about accessibility or documentation or DevOps or something like that. No, that is just like integral part of your development process. And then the product roadmap, the big picture. That is to also align with people who can't read code, who are not, who don't even care. I mean, I know. Here, that is just like, I don't know, something my mind can't, it doesn't compute. It doesn't really compute that someone is not interested in how the code works. But there are people, I promise you, who are not interested in that. And they need some document that describes the vision of your product. That is the roadmap and how it evolves over time. Very, very important. The API or SDK documentation, I will leave you with this XKCD. Give you 30 seconds to read this, not read it aloud. Yes, I know. Oh, the last sentence, If you do things right, it can take people a while to realize that your API documentation is just instructions on how to use your website. Yes. So, why do we need docs? Good question, right? So, our ultimate goal, needs to be software success. So everyone involved here, everyone who is sitting here, is invested in software success, regardless of your role, but you want your software to succeed. So everything that we do needs to contribute to this ultimate goal, because otherwise it's just a distraction, and we don't want distractions. One of the sub-goals of that is unifying all the product-related information. Wow, how did that happen? Okay. So someone needs to fix my slides. Okay. Someone would be me. Shit. Okay. So facilitating the knowledge sharing, because we know development is a team sport. Unless you're just like one of those very stereotypical people who just like sit in the basement with this black hoodie. That would be me sometimes. Not in the basement, but yeah. And obviously, we want to be better in future projects. That would be great as well. So these are the goals that documentation has, which means that everything that we do in documentation needs to serve these goals. If we do not have specs that are super sharp, then the likelihood that we mess up with our project is just like super high. The more detailed our specs are, the more detailed out our requirements are, the better we can just like identify the risks and decrease the likelihood that we need to redesign the entire thing later on. Because that's painful. And no one likes to do this because we were already there. And then we need to do this again. But not because it's so fun or because we like to do this, but because we made just like a crucial mistake in the beginning. And the likelihood that you make crucial mistakes in the beginning that can't be just like easily reverted as just like, yeah, I just need to switch out something with something else. Just like a few lines of code. But that you just like made an architectural choice that led for you into a dead end. That likelihood is higher if you do not write things down. Trust me, I've been there. Unifying the product-related information. So I found a beautiful tweet, and that was 2021, so that was when Twitter was still Twitter. So before the clown took over. So, notes to myself. Notes to myself, don't be political on stage. Okay, so I found a beautiful tweet. Someone said, so I love it when people upload mods to CurseForge with promising descriptions, and then when you load up the page, it has like one block with no function and 3 screens worth of coming soon content. Please do more of that. Someone else responded, yeah, especially when the documentation can only be found by going to one of the devs' Twitter, joining a Discord, scrolling all the way up in a random chat, and opening up a poorly formatted Google Doc that was for the 1.7 version of the mod is completely outdated. Who experienced that? Okay, who was that? Oh, no. Usually, that is what's happening if I ask my customer, so they say, yeah, we have this app, nothing is working, can you help us? And I say, okay, if you give me enough money, then I will think about it. So, and then I ask them, what about docs? Did you document things? And they're like, yeah, sure, we have docs. Of course there's documentation. There's definitely a README. There's some explanations on Jira. Cool. And then some information in Google Docs in a shared folder. You can check if you have access to that. Oh, it doesn't work, sorry. It's not really up to date, but it's probably useful. And worst case scenario, there is plenty of contextual comments in the code. So, and then it's, like I said, exactly what I thought. There is no documentation. So if we want to facilitate the knowledge sharing, because yes, this is a team sport, and we get just like new devs on board, and some are all leaving, or they don't want to explain the same thing over and over and over again because they're just like busy just like fixing some pipeline or whatever. It is good to just like write things down so that you can refer to that. Also, who remembers what they had last Wednesday for lunch? I don't. So how would I know what I did 6 months ago in that app that I built? And why? If I can't even remember what I had for lunch last Wednesday. So that feels like, usually it doesn't work. I would like you to write down the things that you learned. So all the fuck-ups, and there were some. And let other people learn from your wisdom. And also all the things that did work that you never did before, like writing the docs. And this time, that way you would just like improve over time. And then this is just like an upward spiral instead of just like a downward spiral. Okay. So now why does that make you better if you do so? So first things first, I already teased this, better understanding of what you built. So if you write things down and you read what you wrote. So 2 things need to happen. First you need to write it, then you need to read it. Preferably more than once. Like proofreading things all over again. I mean, you write your code several times. You read your own code several times as well because you're just like, it doesn't work, or I should just like do this a little bit different, or then you get a new requirement, and then you just like read this over and over and over again, and you write it over and over again. And that also means the docs that go along with that need to get the same treatment. And this means you get better understanding of how the entire system works, and that includes the architecture. So all the design choices that you made, which services do I use, which APIs do I use, what goes in, what goes out, just like everything that is not code. Then obviously the code, and then all the functionality that goes in. And that will, in the long run, improve what you design and what you implement, and that will also improve maintenance of your projects. Because who does not have fun maintaining projects that they thought were just like shipped years ago, and now they come just like back like zombies and want you just like to take care of them again? I don't like those zombie projects. If we do have docs, like I described, then this is a reference material for everyone on the team. That also means less meetings. Who does not like to sit in meetings? Clarifying things again. They always just like have this title, sync, then one person, other person. Yeah. I just want to, can you just let me code? I don't want to sit in meetings half of my day because that consumes too much mental space for me. And even if I then do have 5 hours of uninterrupted building stuff, I feel too drained from those meetings to be actually productive. So if I wrote the docs, they just like let me in peace and quiet and leave me alone, which is good. If you have docs, that obviously helps with debugging. I mean, this is me every day. Why? Oh, that's why. Yes. It means that if something doesn't work, or if it does work, and we have no idea how, because it's either or, right? Either it doesn't work, I do not understand why it doesn't work, or it does work, and I have no idea how it does work. And docs should give you proactively the answer to both questions. So if you write docs, you will need to put yourself into the shoes of future you. And future you will be super thankful that today you put in the work to do so. And I know this is now a little bit back in the future. Sorry, I forgot my DeLorean at home. But yeah, so just like a little bit. So if you today write something about which services you used, which services you implemented, what was important, what were the constraints, what were the alternatives where you decided you wouldn't go for and why, then this would spare you a lot of thinking about the same thing again over and over in the future. Because you wrote it down. And remember, you will not remember this. Because I will remember this as the same lie as I will refactor this later. Ain't gonna happen. Who of you has the pleasure to onboard new devs into the team? I applaud you. No, for real. So if we onboard new devs, usually they have their own experience, obviously, from projects you were not involved in. They have their own patterns, they have their own signature, they have their way of doing things, regardless on their level. Can be junior devs who are very opinionated on things, could be super relaxed senior devs who are just like, whatever, I don't care. Just like, fuck you, pay me. Could be everything in between. But the beautiful thing is, they will have their way of doing things, and you in your project have also your way of doing things. And do you know what happens now? We call this a merge conflict. Because how would that new developer, how would she know what is your pattern if you don't write it down? And maybe you have a very large team, and more than one person is responsible to onboard the new ones. Maybe you're growing super fast, and now you have developer A and B who are already experienced in your team, and they need to update and onboard developer C and D. And everyone tells everyone else something else, because everyone does their own stuff. That means there is no alignment. There is no alignment in a project, and there is no alignment across projects. And that means we do not have any standards at all, and that obviously increases the workload and decreases the quality. That is just like an economical nightmare to me. I don't like it, because it means less money to buy shoes. We don't do that. So if you have the pleasure to onboard new devs, that means somewhere you need to write down your standards. Not in a super sophisticated way of, oh, we're doing everything correctly and right, and we're super opinionated, but just like the way of how you work. Not how you would like to work. No, I want the actual ugly truth of how you do this. Consistency is a beautiful thing. Consistency in putting in the work means that if you consistently write the docs, then you consistently get value out of reading the docs. And everyone does. And the beautiful thing about knowledge sharing is, let's say, if I give you an apple, that means I do not have the apple anymore, but you have the apple. But if I give you my knowledge, then I still have the knowledge. I did not give it away, but it still persists in me as well. And if we now embrace that development is a team sport, then it would be just like a great pleasure for us to just like put emphasis on sharing the knowledge that we do have about the patterns, about the projects, about the code, about the skills, about all the desired things that we want to share, and put that somewhere where it's easily accessible. It is not enough to say, yeah, technically, we just like have some super convoluted intranet. Who works in a company that has a totally convoluted intranet? You can't find anything? Search is broken? You should become my customer. I fixed that. No, so that is not enough, that you could technically access those documents. It needs to be somewhere where it's clear how it's accessed, and it needs to be just like at the top shelf. And that means literally, it's a piece of paper on your desk, a digital piece of paper on your desk, which is like something that works for you. We'll talk about tools a little bit later, but something that is super obviously accessible to everyone. Did I say it saves time and money? I guess I told you that before. Okay. The future proofing is not only for future me and future you and future you. It is also making sure that if I want to change my software, and I mean that's a common thing, right? That software changes just like all the time because the business people can't decide on what they want to have. So they just like ask us again, can you do this or can you do that or can you add this feature or can you take away that feature? I never said I wanted to have a toggle on that level. So if we wrote down what we built and have a version history and also a roadmap and the release notes, we can just like slap the business with that and tell them, yeah, but you told us that. So this is just like, it just like protects you as well. So it's a good idea to do some future proofing. Like you do future proofing in your code as well. And in my understanding, your code is only as good as your docs are. I know. It's a hard to swallow pill, but this time you need to. And sometimes it's even required that you write the docs. So for some legal or compliance requirements, so I do a lot of business apps, and that means healthcare sector or finance sector or something like that. They have a lot of requirements. And that means to just like averse risks, they need to write things down, even on that code level. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for you as well. Sometimes people tell me, yeah, Luise, you know, but we work agile. We can't write the docs because that is just like way too waterfall-y. So that doesn't work. You know Work Chronicles? I would just like read this to you. So 2 months to launch. Let us know if you have any feedback on the plan. Sure. 1 month to launch. We haven't received your feedback yet. Oh, yeah, I will share it. 2 weeks to launch. It's late, but you can still give us feedback. 1 day to launch. This is horrible. Here are 20 things I would have done differently. So that is what usually happens, right? We ask them over and over and over again, can you please tell me, is that what you wanted? And now we wrote things down, and that now goes hand in hand. Because if we write it down, then we already have the better language to talk with people who do not speak our language. And don't come at me with the Agile Manifesto. I know the working software, that is just so much more important than writing the docs. First, I'm not religious at all. Which means we should stay out of that. I don't believe in this. So if it worked, you wouldn't be sitting here. They're just like, I know, 200 people would just think. 200 people in this room. And they all think, oh, she's talking about docs. That's my nemesis. I should listen to her. If you think that the working software supersedes the goal of the docs and that docs wouldn't be a contributing factor to the software success, you wouldn't be here. So case closed. Another one. It's so good. I asked another engineer for his estimate of the effort. His estimate was 1 week lesser than yours. Know those people? Then why don't you let him do the project? Oh, well, he never completes anything on time. Who finds estimates hard? Do you know why that is hard? Yes, yes. But why are they nonsense the way we used to do that? Because from now on, and we know this, everything will change because you listen to this talk. So, so why is it so hard to estimate an effort? Because we don't know the effort yet. Because we need to make an assumption. And assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups. Correct. It's a saying. I did not invent that. I can't take credit for that. So if we write down what we wanted to have, if we start with the doc instead of starting with the code, then it would be way easier to give just like an estimate that is worth the paper we write it on. So if you're just like, yeah, I'm agile as well, so I wear sneakers and we do just like all the Scrum things, clear descriptions, living documents. Docs is nothing that just like is at the end of the project and then no one ever looks at it again. It's not like the timesheet that you submit and no one looks at it. It's not like that. Second thing is the sprint planning. Obviously, documentation tasks exist. So if you plan the sprint, there are coding tasks and there are docs tasks. If you postpone this to the end of the project, anyone work will not be do the job. Then, who works in a company that has a technical writer? Yay! Wow, 2 souls. More or less. Sometimes, keep them. So technical writers or technical writer roles, or at least acquiring some of the habits of technical writers can enhance your experience as a dev. And then you have just like shared ownership for that. Like parents to a baby, you know? Okay. Then automated doc generation is a beautiful thing. I mean, you can just like put that into your CI/CD pipeline. You can AI let you help you with that. There's just like plenty of sessions at this conference on how AI works and how you could just like have value out of that. So I encourage you to do that. And last but not least, have doc reviews. So if you review code, you should review the docs as well, because your code is only as good as your docs are. Some of the tools, I don't care if you use a static site generator and some markdown files, or if you put that on GitHub pages, or if you work in Confluence or in Notion, you can use a Word document if you like to. I don't care. But do it somewhere and clearly communicate where that somewhere is. Don't put something in Confluence and something in Google Docs and something attached to the Jira ticket that is not linked to everything in Confluence. And then have some chats in Slack and in Teams and on WhatsApp and wherever. That is not working. Anything is better than nothing. So I know, I say you need to do all these things. Obviously, that's the best case. But even if you start small, I guarantee you, you will improve as a dev and you improve your projects. You know this quote, that software is being done like the lawn is being mowed? That is just like a snapshot. That is just like a momentum. And same goes for docs, obviously, as well. So, I promise you get homework. I know, terrible. But first, a little bit of recap. First, writing blinks clarity. That is super important. It's a process, and it's essential to understand your software on a deeper level. Second thing is, the act of documenting involves just like a lot of things, just like capturing everything in a structured format, but also making it accessible to others. So which means do things, tell people about it. It's always a two-step process. Do things, then tell people about it. Same goes for docs. Writing is understanding all of these things. You need to do this to contribute to the ultimate goal of software success. And now the homework. So for your next project, please start with the docs. Hours of thinking and planning can save weeks of coding. And I know you love the coding and you do not like to write the docs, but you still need to do this. Second thing is, make writing down what you want. Just like in an architecture decision log. Just like all the things, the big decisions that needs to be logged. Can be a TXT file, I don't care. Or just like write it down somewhere. Explain the purpose, explain the goals, the constraints as you've experienced them. Not only up front, but this is a living and breathing document. Because very often, later becomes never. I told you, I have teenage daughters. If I tell them to clean their room, what do they say? Later. And do you know what happens? Nothing. Exactly. If you don't write the docs, that will result in technical debt. And this will become just like an awful situation to fix later on because you need to explain that, and you can't, and then you will run just like over with the budget, so we do not want to do that. And with that, thanks.